إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد. Today is 15th of Ramadan, 1445. This is session 13 from the Sira Nabawiyya. So we saw yesterday that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ordered the Prophet ﷺ to warn those people that are near to him in blood relationship, in uterine relationship, وَأَنذِرْ عَشِيرَتَكَ الْأَقْرَبِينَ, and warn your tribe of your kindred. And then we said that the Prophet ﷺ ascended on Mount Safa and started to call O Bani Fihr, O Bani Adi, which were two clans of Quraysh. Then many people gathered, those who could not send someone. Maybe the brothers can move forward. Those who could not respond to the call sent someone in their stead to see what's up. Abu Lahab was also present. The Prophet ﷺ said, you see, if I were to tell you that there were some horsemen in the valley planning to raid you, will you believe me? So they said, yes, we have only witnessed the truth from you. So he ﷺ was known as a truthful person. So he ﷺ said, I am warner to you before severe torment. In other words, if you don't accept the message of Islam, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to punish you. So Abu Lahab promptly replied, he said, perish you all day. تَبًّا لَكَ سَائِرَ الْيَوْمِ. Have you summoned us for such a thing? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala responded to Abu Lahab by revealing the surah, تَبَّتْ يَدَ أَبِي لَهَبٍ وَتَبْ. Perish the two hands of Abu Lahab. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told the Prophet ﷺ to proclaim Islam openly, not only to the Quraysh, but also to all the Arab tribes and everyone that would come to Mecca. So he ﷺ received the ayah where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فَاصْدَعْ بِمَا تُؤْمَرْ وَأَعْرِضْ عَنِ الْمُشْرِكِينَ. Therefore proclaim openly that which you are commanded. Therefore proclaim openly that which you are commanded and turn away from the mushrikeen. So he ﷺ started to invite people to Islam at the gatherings and assemblies of idolaters. So people would come from tribes for Umrah or Hajj. He would recite to them, and then he would recite to them Allah's book, saying as other messengers told their people, Ya qawmi ibudullah ma lakum min ilahin ghayruh. We said this is the essence of the call of all prophets, which is the creed. All the prophets have the same creed, aqidah, that is to worship Allah alone with no partners. And then he ﷺ, leading them by example, began worshipping Allah in front of their eyes, praying aloud in the courtyard of the Kaaba during the daytime while they watched. And then after that, he ﷺ started disapproving of the superstitious practices of idol worship. And he was basically revealing its worthlessness, given concrete proof that idolatry by itself, or taking it as a media through which an idolater could come in contact with Allah, is falsehood. In other words, he's telling them these are stones that you carve into statues and then you call them names and you worship. So how can you claim that these statues actually have any benefit? And that's why, as we know, one of the companions, Hussein, who was the father of Imam ibn Hussein, he came to the Prophet ﷺ and he asked him, he said, what do you worship? Like, which gods do you worship? So he said, I worship 6 gods on this earth and 1 in the heaven. That means he worships Allah, who is up in the heaven, and 6 statues, like, different names. So Rasulullah asked him, like, when you are in dire need, whom do you call upon? He said, I call on Allah, who is up there. He says, then, since you call on Allah in your dire need, leave the other 6 and worship Allah alone. Logic, because basically you're worshiping them in time of ease. But when you have in difficulties, you forget everything except Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. As Allah says in the Quran that when people are in the sea, and then they are under the threat of drowning and they're scared, ضَلَّ عَنْكُمْ مَا تَدْعُونَ إِلَّا إِيَّهِ. They forget everything, all the other gods they worship besides Allah, and they only worship Allah alone. Right? And this is Ikrimah bin Abi Jahl radiallahu anhu, who was one of the people that the Prophet ﷺ said after the conquest of Mecca. He said, kill him even if you find him hanging to the clothes of the Kaaba. Because usually the Arabs, if you hold on to the clothes of the Kaaba, no one can touch you. But he, alayhi salam, about 6 people, he made their blood worthless. One of them, Isa ibn Abi Jahl. So when Prophet ﷺ came Mecca, he ran away from Mecca. And he went to a ship, on a boat in the Red Sea, near where Jeddah is now, basically that's where the Red Sea is. And then he got on the ship and they sailed through the sea. And then a storm came by, and then they were under the threat of drowning. So the mushriks with him in the boat told each other, ask Allah alone for help and make sure you are sincere to Allah. Akhlisu fi du'a. That means don't call to anyone else, because no one is going to save you from this storm except Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So Ikrimah was thinking to himself, he's like, if only Allah can save us from this harm, that means only Allah can save me from death if I go back to Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So he vowed to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that if he is to be saved, he's going to go back to Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and he's going to give him bay'ah, and that's what he did, and he became a Muslim. So his blood was spared, radiallahu anhu. So here, Prophet sallam, used logic to tell them that, these false gods that you're calling upon are things that you carve with your own hands. They can't even benefit themselves. And as we said before, one of the companions was telling the story of him when he was a polytheist. He said, one day I took a long journey to go and worship a statue in some faraway city. And actually, sometimes we laugh about these things, but do you know this is what's happening in Muslim lands today? Like, for example, the country I come from, there is a city called Marrakesh. It's well known. And over there are 7 graves. They call them 7 men, sab'atu rijal. And some grave worshippers, what they do, they would travel from faraway cities like Agadir, for example. It's more than 300 kilometers, barefoot, to go to these graves, to make tawaf around them, and thinking that they are doing a good deed. And if you ask them what's your religion, they tell you, we are Muslims. Talking about this day and age, right? So people, they do these things, and it's ridiculous that they don't have their brains. So this person was going to worship a statue in a faraway place. When he got there, he found a fox urinating on this statue. So he's like, here I am making this long journey to worship a statue. If a statue cannot even save itself from the urine of a fox, how can it help me? So he rejected idol worship altogether, because he sees that a statue can even protect itself against a fox. How can it protect him? So if you use your sound mind that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us, you're going to reach the conclusion that no idol, no God is worthy of worship except Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So when the Prophet ﷺ started calling people to Islam, Quraysh were bothered, obviously. Every time you have leaders of this belief and you have the call to the truth, there's always going to be a collision between the two, right? So they went to see Al-Walid ibn Mughira, one of the leaders of Quraysh, about this issue, basically telling him, we need a solution, this is a problem. Muhammad ﷺ is calling the Arabs to his religion. So Al-Walid invited them to agree to unanimous resolution. So that he said, let's make up something. Like ISIS blew up something. Let's all agree on this. Let's repeat this lie. Given examples of today's world, when they want to do something, they agree on a certain lie and say, let's just repeat this lie, and everybody's going to believe it. So he said, let's agree on one thing, and then we're going to tell the Arabs that this person is a sorcerer. He does witchcraft, so that they don't believe him. And as they say in the West, they say a lie, if it's repeated many times, people will tend to believe it. The first time you hear a lie, you're going to be like, what? No, this is not true. But if you keep on hearing the same lie over and over again, you will start believing it. And this is from the study of psychology of human beings. And this is what they do in the mass media in the West. They first come up with false news, people will reject it in the beginning, but every time they will repeat the same thing, people will accept it slowly but surely. So he said, let's agree on the fact that he does witchcraft. This is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed the verse where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, إِنَّهُ فَكَّرَ وَقَدَّرَ فَقُتِلَ كَيْفَ قَدَّرَ ثُمَّ قُتِلَ كَيْفَ قَدَّرَ ثُمَّ نَظَرَ ثُمَّ عَبَسَ وَبَصَرَ ثُمَّ أَدْبَرَ وَاسْتَكْبَرَ فَقَالَ إِنْ هَذَا إِلَّا سِحْرٌ يُؤْثَرُ إِنْ هَذَا إِلَّا قَوْلُ الْبَشَرِ. So verily, this Walid ibn Mughira, he thought and plotted, like he wanted to come up with a lie that would stick to the Prophet ﷺ. So let him be cursed, Allah continues. So let him be cursed, how he plotted. And once more, let him be cursed, how he plotted. Then he thought, then he frowned, and he looked in a bad-tempered way. Then he turned back and was proud, he was too arrogant. And then he said, this is nothing but magic of all days. This is nothing but the word of a human being. He's talking about the Quran. So this was their agreement. So when the Arabs would come, they would tell them this person does witchcraft. Be careful of him. So people, when they hear witchcraft, they run away. They're not even going to listen to him. But the Prophet ﷺ would still go to the people, gathering during the Hajj season, follow them to their camps in Uqad, in Majana and Dhul Majaz, invite them to Allah. Abu Lahab would always shadow the Prophet ﷺ, crying aloud, do not listen to him, he is a liar, he is an apostate, especially that he is his uncle. So he tells them, oh, this is just my nephew, don't listen to him, he's sick. People, when they hear that, they tend to believe him. This is his nephew, right? So he's a family member, he tends to know his nephew more than anyone else. So having fully perceived that Muhammad ﷺ could never be prevented from his call, Quraysh, in a desperate attempt to spread the tidal wave of the call of the Prophet ﷺ, turned to other cheap means. So defamation didn't work. And again, we're looking at the Sira, and we have to look at what's happening today about Islam and Muslims, right? The disbelievers, they go about defamation schemes, right? And if that doesn't happen, they go to, as the Quraysh did, they taunt, degrade, ridicule, and belie in laugher instigated cheap manners. They make fun of the Prophet ﷺ, all of which intended towards the new converts in general. Because when a person just becomes a Muslim, when he hears these negative things, it's possible that he reverts back to his disbelief. Because normally people, they don't have time, they don't have the patience to dig into things, and they just want what's easy. So they may accept the call at first, but when they hear all these negative things, it may impact their hearts and they may apostate. And this is actually what happened to many people that believed, and then when they heard what the Prophet ﷺ, what happened to the Prophet ﷺ in the Isra and Mi'raj, they apostated. Because they couldn't absorb it with their own minds. They said, well, how can you tell us that he went all the way to Jerusalem, went up to the heaven and back in one night? So many people used their minds, and as a result, they apostated. So the aim of this campaign is to drag the spirit of despair into the morale of these new converts. So they will feel despair. They will feel like, it's not for me. As we said, most people, they just want easy life. People in general. So they also put their efforts to degrade the Prophet ﷺ as a man possessed by a jinn and an insane person. So they would tell people that he ﷺ was insane, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Al-Hijr, وَقَالُوا يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِي نُزِّلَ عَلَيْهِ الذِّكْرُ إِنَّكَ لَمَجْنُونَ. And they say, oh you, Muhammad ﷺ, to whom the dhikr, the Quran, was revealed, verily you are a madman, you are crazy. Or they also accuse of being a liar, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَعَجِبُوا أَن جَاءَهُم مُنذِرٌ مِّنْهُمْ وَقَالَ الْكَافِرُونَ هَذَا سَاحِرٌ كَذَّابٌ. And they, the Arabs, wonder that a warner, Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, has come to them among themselves. And the disbelievers say, this Prophet is a sorcerer and is a liar. And of course, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَمَا أَرْسَلْنَا مِن رَسُولٍ إِلَّا بِلِسَانِ قَوْمِهِ لِيُبَيِّنَ لَهُمْ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, every time He sent a messenger, He always sent him from among the same people. With one exception was Lut alayhi salam. Lut alayhi salam had immigrated from Iraq with Ibrahim alayhi salam. And that's why when his people wanted to come and take his guests and do the evil homosexual act with them, Lut alayhi salam could not defend them, so he said, لَوْ أَنَّ لِي بِكُمْ قُوَّةً أَوْ آوِي إِلَىٰ رُكْنٍ شَدِيدٍ. If I only had a strong tribe to stop you from taking my guests, or if I had a very strong helper to go to. So of course he had a strong helper, that was Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But that's why the Prophet ﷺ in the hadith says, after Lut alayhi salam, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala never sent any prophet except from among the best of the people. So he alayhi salam was from the tribe of Bani Hashim. He was a well-known person. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, لَقَدْ جَاءَكُمْ رَسُولٌ مِنْ أَنفُسِكُمْ. In another recitation, مِنْ أَنفَسِكُمْ, among the best among you. Okay? So he had the best of lineage alayhi salam. And as he said, throughout his lineage alayhi salam, any one of his grandparents did not give birth to anyone as a result of fornication. It was always legal marriage. So he ﷺ was purebred. Because there was a practice in the Jahiliyyah, per chance, someone is born out of zina, and then after that he gives grandkids. But he ﷺ, through his lineage, all the way to Adam ﷺ, none of his grandparents is born out of zina. So he ﷺ was one of the purest of Arab breeds. Their eyes would also look at the good man as if they would eat him up. So when they look at the Prophet Sallam, they would be like staring at him in a very forceful, very hateful means. Like sometimes today you see some non-Muslims looking at you when you're wearing the qamis and a beard. They're like, they just want to attack you with their eyes. That's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, the surah, وَإِن يَكَادُ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا لَيُزْلِقُونَكَ بِأَبْصَارِهِمْ لَمَّا سَمِعُوا الذِّكْرَ وَيَقُولُونَ إِنَّهُ لَمَجْنُونَ. Very, those who disbelieve would almost make you slip with their eyes. Like they would want you to slip and fall down and bad things to happen to you just by giving you the evil eye. Through hatred when they hear the reminder, when they hear the Quran. So they feel very hateful. Among the early converts, there was a group who had, unfortunately, no strong clan, and their back was not covered. So there were some weak people. These innocent souls were ridiculed and taunted in season and out of season. Referring to such people, the superior Quraysh nobles used repeatedly to ask the Prophet ﷺ with jest, laughter, and disrespect, أَهَؤُلَاءِ الَّذِينَ مَنَّ اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِمْ بِبَنِينَ. Now those telling us these slave people that became Muslim, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala chose them to give them a favor from among us, while we, the Quraysh, we are a higher position. So for them, because they were higher ones, they saw that the meek ones, the slaves or the freed slaves, did not deserve this mercy from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this actually almost all the prophets had the same situation. That's why Nuh alayhi salam also, they told him the same thing. They said, kick away these weak people from you, and then we'll come and believe in you. So Nuh alayhi salam said, وَمَا أَنَا بِطَارِدِ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا. I'm not gonna kick them away. Their Lord is well known of what is in their heart, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, أَلَيْسَ اللَّهُ بِعَلِمٍ بِالشَّاكِرِينَ. Does Allah not know best those who are grateful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for this mercy? So Allah guides whomever He wants according to what people want and according to their own choices. And they were described, these Quraysh, they were described as Allah described for us. Verily, during the worldly life, those who committed crimes of disobeying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala used to laugh at those who believed in Islam. And whenever they passed by them, they used to wink at one another like this, like they wink like, look at that guy, look at that, look at his dress, look at his long beard, look at that woman, what is he putting on? So it's like what's happening nowadays, right? So this happened back then, and it's in the Quran. And they used to wink at one another in mockery. And when they returned to their own people, they would return jesting, making fun of these Muslims, these backwards, this, that. And when they saw these believers, they say, verily, these have indeed gone astray. They left the religion of Ibrahim, because they thought that they were on the religion of Ibrahim, with their statue worship. Right? So that's why many Muslims today that worship graves, they think that they are the ones that are real Muslims, and the ones who are telling them, don't do these things, are the ones who are misguided or extremists. Verily those indeed have gone astray, but they, the disbelievers, had not been sent as watchers over the believers. This is the ayah in Surah Al-Mutaffifin. إِنَّ الَّذِينَ أَجْرَمُوا كَانُوا مِنَ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا يَضْحَكُونَ وَإِذَا مَرُّوا بِهِمْ يَتَغَامَزُونَ وَإِذَا انقَلَبُوا إِلَىٰ أَهْلِهِمْ انقَلَبُوا فَكِهِينَ وَإِذَا رَأَوْهُمْ قَالُوا إِنَّ هَؤُلَاءِ لَضَالُّونَ وَمَا أُرْسِلُوا عَلَيْهِمْ حَافِظِينَ. So we said the first method is mockery, trying to discredit the Prophet ﷺ. Second method is distorting Muhammad ﷺ's teachings, creating doubts, and circulating false propaganda. For example, they would say that the Quran that the Prophet ﷺ was reciting is nothing but the tales of the ancients. وَقَالُوا أَسَاطِيرُ الْأَوَّلِينَ اكْتَتَبَهَا فَهِيَ تُمْلَى عَلَيْهِ بُكْرَةً وَأَصِيلًا. What Muhammad ﷺ is saying is nothing but tales of the ancients, which Muhammad ﷺ has written down. And of course we know that he's not writing down. Allah says that we sent you as an illiterate who cannot write down, so that they don't accuse you that you wrote down the Quran. And still they accused him that he was writing the Quran, subhanAllah, even though he couldn't read or write. And that these tales are dictated to the Prophet ﷺ in the morning and the afternoon. Also, the wicked persons went on ceaselessly putting in people's ears that the Quran was not true revelation. Just like today, we have some hypocrites and some disbelievers who learn Arabic, they're called mustashriqeen, and then they try to take apart like the religion, and they start with the Sunnah. First they tell you Sunnah isn't authentic, or if they say not authentic, they say Hadith Ahad, the one that has one chain just one person in the chain of narration that said this one we don't accept it in halal haram, just like the Mu'tazila and stuff. So they start with the Sunnah, and then after that they try to reject it altogether. Then they're gonna go to the Quran by itself, and then after that they're gonna do like some of the sects of the Shia say. They say, oh, this Quran is not the true Quran. The Quran Fatima is the true Quran. This is just a portion of it. So they go there slowly because why? They want to discredit the Quran because they know that it's powerful. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said about the Quran that it's a light. يهدي به الله من اتبع رضوانه سبل السلام. This Quran, if you read it and you understand it, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will guide your heart to the truth. No one will misguide you, because the light in your heart that will be instilled in it through the Quran, no one can put it out. No deviant scholar, no doubtful disbeliever or hypocrite, no one can take that away from your heart. So stick to the Quran, my brothers, because the Quran, the disbelievers have tried so many times to falsify it, but they couldn't, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has protected it. So what are they doing? They're falsifying the meaning and the understanding, ta'wil. They take things out of their context, and they try to tell you like what the Christians say about the Bible. Don't take it in a literal way. When Allah says, kill the mushriks, it doesn't mean kill them. It means just kill them with anger, by leaving them, turning you back to them. Like Tariq Sawidan says, when Allah says, about the wife, you admonish her, she does not want to take the straight path, then you leave her in bed. That means you sleep with her in the same bed, but you don't have intercourse with her. And if she doesn't, then you hit her. But of course, we're not talking about boxing. Blue eyes, that's not the hitting. You are allowed to hit a woman in Islam. Okay, even the British, they have a rule. It's called the rule of thumb. You know where this came from? If you were to hit your wife in Britain, the stick should be thinner than your thumb. This is where the rule of thumb came from. So hitting women, even for them, they had it. But of course, in Islam, it's better not to, because Rasul said, those that hit their wives, they're not the best among you. But some women, they need that. Just like some kids, sometimes you need a tap, you need anger, you need to hit her in the chest. Of course, if you go the first two steps. That's why I said, in the beginning, I'm not here to make, to be famous. I'm here to tell the truth, how it is. Whether people like it or not like it. Tariq Suwaydan, he says, يضربوهن. It doesn't mean hit them. It means يضربوهن like يضربوا في الأرض. That means walk away and leave them. Okay? But Prophet specifically in the hadith tells you that you have to feed her, you have to clothe her, and if she obeys you, don't be harmful to her. But if she disobeys you, then hit her, but not in a method to leave a mark on her or a bruise. Okay, in other words, like I said, some people, they take this out of context and they start, taking their anger on their wives. This is not the best way to do it. So we're gonna stop here, inshallah. We're at 22 minutes. If you have any questions, you can go ahead and ask.